And our top focus at this hour, President Donald Trump has announced that US and India have finalized a trade deal. Ahead of the announcement, Trump spoke to the Indian Prime Minister.
Absolutely. And the deal comes after several months of negotiations in which between which the Trump administration levied a steep 50% tariff on Indian exports to the U.S. 25% of these tariffs were for India's crude oil trade with Russia.
In a post on social media, Trump said that the U.S. is reducing the reciprocal tariff from 25% to 18% out of friendship and respect for Prime Minister Modi. The U.S. president also noted that India would reduce tariffs and non-tariff barriers against the U.S. to zero. Following Trump's post, Prime Minister Modi took to social media as well and expressed delight that Made in India products will now have a reduced tariff of 18% in the U.S. markets.
A White House official confirmed to ANI that Washington will also drop the additional 25% tariff on Indian imports imposed due to New Delhi's purchase of Russian oil, noting that India has to cease, not just reduce, Russian oil purchases.
Trump claimed that Prime Minister Modi had agreed to stop buying Russian oil and increase purchases from the United States and Venezuela. The Indian Prime Minister's statement, though, made no mention of any such move. A comprehensive document laying out the details of this deal is still awaited.
The U.S. ambassador to India, Sergio Gore, confirmed to Indian media that the total tariff on India will be 18%.
Well, this puts New Delhi at an advantage over its regional export rivals in South and Southeast Asia. India now faces lower tariffs than Indonesia at 19%, Bangladesh and Vietnam at 20%, and it also holds a slight edge over Pakistan, where tariffs stand at 19% as well. The gap is much wider with China, though, which faces tariffs of 34%.
And the deal comes days after India and the EU announced what both sides call the mother of all trade deals. While European Union is India's largest trading partner as an economic bloc, U.S. continues to be the single largest trading partner as well. And well, to discuss more on this, we are now being joined by Raymond E. Victory from Washington, D.C. He is a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Trade Development and Senior Associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. It's a pleasure having you on the broadcast with us. Let's begin with the timing of this announcement. And as we just mentioned, it comes on the sidelines where we had the EU and India trade deal happening, the mother of all deals. How do you read into this?
Well, thanks very much for having me and allowing me to comment on this. You know, I'm very much a believer in WION, World is One, and the world is one in both strategic and economic matters. And so it's impossible to have the kind of cooperation between India and the U.S. To visit any of the great problems facing the world, whether they be strategic, war, peace, health, across the board, unless you have a strong economic relationship. You can't be at war over tariffs and cooperate in these other areas. That having been said, this announcement, of course, is welcome news because the U.S.-India relationship has been in a downward spiral for the last year, really because of President Donald Trump's missteps in regard to India. And they are not limited, of course, just to customs, whether they be the reciprocal tariff, whether they be in regard to oil, but they extend to H-1B visas, $100,000 visa fee, the claiming of credit for ending outbreak of hostilities after the terrible tragedy up in Kashmir. So we were in a downward spiral, and hopefully this is going to arrest that and get us back to cooperation between these two largest and greatest democracies in the world. But as you have pointed out, there is a lot in the details which we have no idea about. This is vintage Trump trying to make great television. by announcing a deal, a transaction in apparent way in which he has won some great concessions. But he has announced the commitments to buy $500 billion worth of goods. 500 billion is a very, very large number, and apparently has no foundation. He's announced things that India is going to do in complete opening up, although he doesn't say it's going to be immediate. So this is a welcome development, but by no means more than a framework for getting things back on track and renewing the upward path of cooperation between India and the U.S., which many of us have been working on, both in India and the U.S., for 30 years.
Mr. Vikri, it's interesting you mentioned that it lays the framework for things to start moving forward again or upward again. I just want to come to one of the lines that were mentioned from Donald Trump's statement. He said, India will likewise move forward to reduce their tariffs and non-tariff barriers against United States to zero, and zero is in capitals. What does that imply as we still wait for finer details to come in?
Well, it seems to me it's hyperbole and overstatement. You notice he say will be moving to. He doesn't say it's going to be zero, and he doesn't say anything about the particular core interest of India in regard to agricultural matters, particularly dairy matters, matters which have to do with how chickens are fed, which is a matter of great cultural sensitivity. So it's a typical hyperbole. The reality is that at a working level, there has been great cooperation. In fact, a deal has been on the table much like this for some time. But President Trump is a transactional president, and he wants to win in a transaction. This is to be contrasted with both Republican and Democratic presidents who have worked on a relationship building and a relationship in regard to economics as well as strategic health and the wide range of matters that can benefit from cooperation between these two greatest democracies.
Also, you mentioned about this, when there was a mention of the Russian oil, stop buying Russian oil, which is something that has always been a point of contention. This is why the tariffs actually started, which, according to Trump, there is no mention. Of course, we're going to be waiting for a proper statement from India now, but we have a statement from the Prime Minister who does not really mention Russia. But then in Trump's statement and his post, he also mentions more, buying more oil from Venezuela, potentially Venezuela. The timings right now, how do you assess this? When we took a look at Trump's presidential term and when we look at Venezuela, how much time would it actually take for India to actually come to a position where we start trading and getting oil from Venezuela as compared to Russia, which which has been reduced, but we still are, India is still buying Russian oil. How do you assess this?
Well, the way I assess it is that cooperation between India and the U.S. on the invasion by Russia into Ukraine, the breach of the peace there, the breach of UN Charter provisions having to do with non-interference and really anti-imperialism. It is true that the United States and India need to work more closely on this. And there's also true that there's plenty of oil in the world for India and everyone else. The question is one of price. And what is not said is what kind of price advantages could be offered from the United States. This business about Venezuela really is pie in the sky. The fact is Venezuela's oil production mechanism is going to take many years to restore and really is sort of a side gambit, it seems to me, for the president to help justify what he did in capturing the president of Venezuela and taking him to New York under military force. So, yes, it can be worked out, and it is to be welcomed that the United States and India and Europe would see that peace is indivisible and that India would work more closely as opposed to just saying that strategic autonomy demands that India be able to buy all the oil it wants from Russia. But you notice that nothing has been said by Prime Minister Modi about it. And of course, you're very acutely aware of the political sensitivity in regard to India. So this is just another indication that what you have here basically is a framework rather than a done deal. And if you look at what President Trump has done in other tariff situations, whether it be South Korea, whether it be Vietnam, Japan, when it comes down to detail, many of the things which are announced as done by President Trump are not really done and have to be worked out.
Mr. Vikri, thanks so much for elaborating on that and, really making a viewer understand where things stand as of now. The statements have come in, but let's look at it as a framework, as a first step after a long time in an upward direction for both countries. Thanks so much for joining us here. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. It's always my pleasure.